fix.
Hello and welcome. This is the Filmmakers Podcast. This is a podcast where we talk filmmaking, from indie film to studio films and everything in between. How to get them made, how to make them, and how to try to F it up in our very, very humble opinion.
I am Giles Alderson. I'm a writer, director, and I'm a producer, and I'm over the moon that you lot get to listen to today's guest, James Cullen Bressack, who's also a writer, director, and a producer. But what an amazing story he has. We will get to that. But I am super pumped to have with me as my co-host today. It is the fantastic producer and exec producer and actor. He stars in my Knights of Camelot movie, which is out very soon, July the 13th. It is the delectable, fantastic Ian Sharp. Hello, mate.
Hello, mate. Good to be here again. Come on.
It's a delight to have you again, mate. Honestly, you've done so well in the previous podcast, as so many of our Twitter followers did say how good you were.
Cheers, guys. I really appreciate it. That's very kind. Very good to hear.
It's a pleasure. So, if you don't know, Ian has made quite a few brilliant films that I love, including The Marker, which he came onto the podcast to talk about, which was episode 85, I do believe.
Well remembered.
So if you do want to hear Ian talk in depth about how he makes his films, then do go listen to that. He has made The Marker. He has been involved in these movies, Westwood and The Visitor, which is in post now, and Holston, which played at Sundance along with Westwood. And Undergods is coming out as well soon, is that right?
Yeah, indeed, yeah. So, Sharp House, my production finance company, we've kind of worked on maybe 15, 20 films in the last 2 or so years, so it's been an interesting few years.
That's incredible. Hang on, 15 films in 2 years.
Yeah, probably more.
That's prolific, mate.
Cheers, dude.
That's really impressive. How have you managed to sustain it to do that many films in that short space of time?
Just a good team, mate, really. I think my superpower is delegation, and another thing that we kind of instill at Sharp House is get rid of the ego. So, we're all actively involved. I have a good team amongst us, and we're all, over several projects at once. So, I'm by no means a finance expert, because a lot of films sometimes we just write a check, but I know enough to kind of help the project get moving forward, and if need be, maybe further down the line, help with sales, distribution, that kind of stuff.
What happens if someone they had a project now and they went, oh, I want to give it to Sharp House? Is that something you're actively looking at? Yeah,
definitely. I think whilst all this kind of COVID experience, and if we're still in that COVID, I can kind of explain what we're doing at the moment, but if we're out of that, it's pretty much the same anyway. It's just a case of, ideally some kind of recommendation would be a good way to reach out to us. Or, you've listened to this podcast is a great way of connecting with me over social media. And then, send me, we've taken on projects at literally at logline stage, script stage, completed films we've jumped on, exec producers. As a financier, normally they're a little bit more developed, they're a little bit more packaged, and then we step in. But really, we are a creative business. We're just fortunate to be able to put finance as well. So at any stage, really, we're happy to take a look at.
That's amazing. You're also doing TV now, right?
Yeah, just branched into television, so pretty new in that stuff. Got a few projects now that we're really excited about, working with some new emerging talent, which is great. And then the same principle applies, log lines, Bibles, a pilot episode, anything really. Just kind of, we are definitely, our doors are much wider open when it comes to television, that's for sure.
I think any filmmakers out there listening, you want to get in touch with Ian. He's a great guy for one, but also he makes stuff, he gets stuff done, and that in this industry is a lot of people talk, right? I mean, a lot of people do chat shit about saying, hey, I'm making a movie, but actually those who are actually doing it, it's kind of few and far between. So Ian is one of those people. So those people are listening to this, you're already in a lucky position, because now you know Ian enough to tweet him and say, hey, thank you for talking to us and spending your time. And it's a way in. It's a way in, and that's what you need in this industry. It's all about who you know.
Exactly.
Definitely is.
It's a good point. Very good point.
So obviously let's talk about this week's podcast, this week's episode, where we have James Cullen Bressack, who is producer, director, exec. It wears many hats, but he made his first feature film when he was 18 years old. Wow.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
I mean,
It's pretty impressive.
it is impressive. He made a film called My Pure Joy when he was 18 for $7,000.
$7,000, yeah.
Dollars even, so it's less. And he learned so much on that movie. He even says himself he can't watch that film now because he's moved on so much. But I think it's a really interesting episode for those people who are get out and do it types, because he's a huge example of someone who can do that.
Yeah.
And he talks about how to deal with difficult crew. He talks about how he made his second and third movies, what he learned, how he wanted to build, and how now he gives a voice to first-time filmmakers, similar to Sharpie here, how he does help filmmakers, and how on his sequels to one of his breakout hits that he then went on to produce and exec produce, the Jennifer series, he brought on new directors every time. And I think that's impressive. We also talk about how he directed Beyond the Law, which is a Steven Segal movie, which is out now, which is kind of cool. Anything like with Steven Segal, you kind of know what you're getting, but I think James has delivered something totally different and fresh here, and I think you'll like it a lot. So yeah, it was a fun chat with him, wasn't it?
Really impressive, really humble guy. I really enjoyed the conversation.
Totally agree. So you're going to enjoy this too. I'm sure you'll get a lot out of this. Pens and papers ready. Also, if you haven't yet, do go watch The Dare. Do go support if you are in the USA and Canada. It means the world to me. And if you do watch it, give us a lovely review on Amazon or iTunes. It does make a huge difference to young filmmakers. I say young, I'm not young. It does make a huge difference to filmmakers. So do support if you can. Serial Killer's Guide to Life is also out as well. And Arthur and Merlin, Knights of Camelot is released on July the 13th. That's literally, I think, 3 weeks away. Ian Sharp is obviously starring in that, aren't you, mate?
Yeah.
As well as Richard Brake, Stella Stocker, and as my King Arthur, Richard Short. So why not go watch these movies that we've been talking about for so long? I need to give a shout out to some fantastic people who have just launched their crowdfunder on Greenlit. It is Charlotte Movie. It is made by Martin Hardwick and Georgia Conlon. They're producing a very intriguing indie film called Charlotte. It's a psychological thriller with a big twist. I don't want to give too much away, so why not go to their Greenlit page and go check out the movie. And if you have any spare cash floating around, please donate and please support. This project looks amazing, and it has been exec produced by the fantastic Lynn and David Coleman from Dal Productions, who are amazing. So do support if you can. Link is in the show notes as always. And well, if you've got a crowdfunder ready to go, let me know and I'll shout it out on the podcast. If you just want to shout out, let me know as well. Or if you are a filmmaker and you've had a film released or about to, then get in touch. The Filmmakers Podcast at gmail.com. Or just slide into my DMs, our DMs, I should say, at Filmmakers Pod on Twitter. And a huge thanks to Robbie McCain for editing this week's podcast. Thank you, brother. It means the world. And if you do like this podcast, do tell your friends, do pass the message on. And if you're feeling really nice and wonderful, and I know you are, why not go to iTunes and give us a lovely, lovely review. Right, Sharpie, should we get to it? Our chat with James?
Let's go for it.
Here it is. Enjoy, everyone. It's a delight to welcome to the Filmmakers Podcast, James Cullen Bressack. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing good. Thank you so much for having me.
It's a pleasure. Joining me today is Ian Sharp, fellow producer.
Glad to be here.
So, James, tell me, how is it going right now? You're in LA. It's a little bit mental. Are you getting cabin fever right now?
Yeah, I'm getting a little bit of cabin fever. I mean, being trapped in your house, I haven't really left the house in like 30 interesting, but I really can't complain because there's prisoners in prison right now for nonviolent crimes and they don't even have Netflix and stuff like that. I mean, I think it's an interesting thing to think about. It definitely puts you in other people's shoes. I'll tell you that much. For the first time in nearly a decade, I'm cooking all of my meals. Like I used to, go out for dinner like every other night or something.
It changes you, doesn't it? How's your filmmaking world changed? Because obviously you're a very productive man. What's your process of trying to be an indie filmmaker right now? Has it changed? Obviously it has.
It was funny because I was talking to my girlfriend before all this happened, and I was like, I need a vacation. Like, in 10 years, I haven't taken off more than like 2 or 3 weeks in between movies in 10 years. And so like, my dad passed away.
Sorry to hear that, man.
About 7 or 8 months ago now, back in August. And so, I just wanted some time off, because even then I wasn't able to take really time off because I had a movie going like right after that I had already like signed on to do. So I really just, you know, haven't had any time off. So I told her, hey, I want to have time off. And so we booked a vacation to go somewhere. And then, you know, all this happened. So I guess technically this is my vacation.
It's just not as glamorous, is it, when you're stuck in your house as a beautiful beach?
I mean, I'm doing all the same things I would have done. I'm just not doing it in a glamorous location. But you know, it's interesting too, because I'm also finding like I'm not doing well not being creative. So I mean, I started making a experimental film where I'm just like going out anytime I'm out like grocery shopping or doing something. I just film random things that I'm just gonna you know, cut together in like a Koyaanisqatsi type of way. Right now, distributors are super hungry to get something because they need finished movies, because nothing else is going to be shot for the rest of the year.
Yeah.
and this is interesting. Obviously, I want to talk to you about that and how you're finding things right now, you know, as a very creative person that you are. And like you say, people are crying out for stuff right now. And it is a good time if you have a movie finished. Are you in that position where obviously For Jennifer is now, you know, about to break out? And
so that was released. And I had Beyond the Law, which came out in theaters, which starts Steven Segal and DMX in the States, that I directed. And then I have my movie Alone that played Sitges, which was a horror movie, which we just got a distribution deal this week.
Oh, congratulations.
That we're just closing the stuff on, and that's going to have a really decent release now, which is pretty cool. And I think what it really gears towards is, and we're seeing more of this now because everybody's home, which is like niche markets are super important, because like, yes, you know, there's a million things to watch across Amazon Prime and Netflix, right? But you, me, and everybody, after about a week, you're scrolling through and you're like, you've either seen it or you're not interested on everything that's on there, even though they have millions of things on there, because you're just no longer interested in what's there. You want new stuff. And that's just how it is, because you know, if you're a horror fan that likes particularly slasher films, and in about a week's time, 2 weeks time, you've gone through all the slasher films that are on there. If you like, you know, adult comedies, you know, you've watched all of those by now. So they need all these things to replenish what the niche market is focused on, because people are starting to go, well, there's nothing here anymore, because the thing that they're into watching and they're at home watching a lot of is now gone. If that makes sense. Because you know, yes, there's a million things, but if you're focused on just watching stuff that's similar to Family Guy, you're going to go through all those shows in about 2 weeks.
Yeah, it's so true. And I think that's why, luckily, in some way, that The Dare came out, you know, 4 weeks ago or whatever it was, because people are now at home going, hey, I'm like you say, going through all the dark horror movies, you know, slasher movies type thing, gore movies, and The Dare will pop up. And people are watching it, and it's been great. And for that, because now people are going, I want to watch movies.
Really quickly, you'll also notice another thing, like, you know, people would think people are only watching these streaming services like, you know, Netflix and, you know, Disney Plus and all that stuff. Those are great. But you can tell that people want more content than just that, because all of our rental numbers, and talk to your distributor if you haven't yet, but our rental numbers are up on everything. Like the actual paid rentals, because the stuff that isn't on those sites, people are paying to watch because they just want to see, you know, what they consider as new. They want to feel like they're paying to go see something that they would have seen in the theaters, or that they would have, you know, bought on DVD during this time in the store. There's still that thrill of spending some money to do something. It makes you feel like you're.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. I mean, we've been for whatever reason, Jumanji 2 didn't come out in the UK until recently, and it was on Virgin, one of the kind of video on demand platforms here, and I think it was £20 or whatever. And I was like, "Yep, no problem." And I think that was just to rent it as well. It wasn't actually to buy it. And I think, obviously, you know, £20 is still a lot of money, but I think as a parent right now, I am, whatever I get access to, whatever kind of premium content that I normally would go to the cinema for, I'm paying for it. You know, that's 2 hours of escapism right there.
I completely agree. I mean, that's the thing is like, I don't feel that we can put a price on like peace of mind and entertainment right now in these times. Like, not saying that like people should price gouge people, but like, I don't think the consumer is going to be hesitant to spend between like, $2.99 to like, $10 to watch something that they haven't seen.
James, what are your thoughts on Quibi by any chance? Do you have any thoughts? Because,
I, before all this, was not really like, I didn't understand who would care, but Quibi offered like a 3-month trial. So I'm on Quibi and I have to say the new season of Punk'd is a lot of fun. It's the only thing that I've watched on it. I've watched all the episodes, but I like it. It's fun. And it's fun that there's only like, 10-minute videos. It's basically like watching silly videos on YouTube, but with ridiculously high production value.
Right.
So, I mean, I've enjoyed it because it's like one of those things, especially like, I've been doing a good amount of gaming over here. And so it's just like, when you're waiting for something to load, watch a 10-minute episode. Right. When you're supposed to have, if you're waiting on them to call you, watch a 10-minute episode. Like I'm not fully getting into it's good little time filler stuff, if that makes sense. Yeah. I don't know if a lot of other people experience this, but I know I'm actually able to give more of my, and it's horrible saying this because I know I'm a filmmaker, but a lot of the time I'm able to give more of my undivided attention to something I'm watching on my phone than I am on my TV, because my phone isn't going off if I'm on it watching something. You know what I mean? So for me, it's like, seeing a movie in the theaters, I shut off my phone. I can be completely invested, but in your house, it's hard to always focus on what's on the TV. It's much easier on my phone a lot of the time.
That's true. That's true. I mean, you make a good point there. So someone mentioned it the other day. I can't remember. Maybe I read it somewhere where obviously, when we got a movie on in the background or at the cinema or whatever, we still checking in on our phone. But now Quibi is designed for that platform. I haven't got it yet, but I will. I'm just curious. Like, are you tempted to kind of look at something else, or is it a weird consumer experience where literally you're engaged with the phone and you got to stick with the phone? You can't really kind of concentrate on anywhere else.
Yeah, I mean, it's, you're not using anything on your phone when you're doing it, so you're only concentrating on what's on Quibi, which is you give that your undivided attention. Yeah. I like the show Punk'd that they have. Yeah. They have a bunch of other shows, but those other shows haven't really caught my attention yet.
Right.
But that said, like, I might get into some of them because some of them look fun, but for me, I don't know if I'd be into a series that has like an actual story arc that's only like 6-minute episodes.
Yeah.
I don't know. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I should watch it and find out because they have high production value. But I've actually only watched Punk'd.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just so many platforms now, but I think it's interesting. I think kids are going to love that. They like their 6-minute bursts and they like their, their concentration levels are different because of YouTube and because of all the little fast videos that they've got. I think it's going to be big. I really do, in my opinion.
As filmmakers, I think we should be supporting it because it's not going to replace anything.
Yeah.
But they're definitely spending money. Yeah. And so that's great because it's boosting that economy.
Totally agree. So obviously you have made and been involved with so many movies. It's quite incredible, and you are still quite young. But you, from what I can see, and please correct us if we're wrong, is you're 18, you burst onto the scene with your sort of debut movie, My Pure Joy. But before that, you'd already produced, co-produced, been involved with, casting director, you were execs, associate producer on so many other shorts, movies, bits before that. Tell us what you were doing to get, to make your first movie by 18 that you directed, and how you suddenly already created this world of, you were already a machine. You were already a movie making machine by that point.
Basically in school, like I was the kid that the teacher would assign a book report and I would make a short film about why I didn't want to do the book report. So, that was pretty much what I would turn in. So a lot of my early short films, which are, listed on IMDb, was just me fucking off in school, not wanting to do the things that I wanted to, because I kept saying, like, when am I going to use this when I'm making movies? I don't need to do this. I'm going to be making movies. I had a very one track mind that this is what I was going to be doing. I'd have to say that it started at a very young age. My dad was a writer. He won 3 Emmys and a WGA award.
Wow. So he obviously got your inspiration from him. Did he want you to go into the business?
Oh yeah. My dad was my biggest fan. We actually wrote a couple things together, which was an amazing experience. Wow. But I learned a lot about storytelling and stuff from him, and it was great. And, he told me at a very young age that I was going to be like a director, because, he had a TV show, at the time it was called Captain Simeon and the Space Monkeys. And I helped him come up with, I was 3 years old, and I helped him come up with an episode. And so that came out. And so he took me to the recording of the episode, and David Warner was playing the character that I had come up with for the episode, which was Rhesus One, which is an evil monkey that turns good. And I walked up to him and gave him direction at 3 years old, and my dad found it hilarious. And I said to him, "I created you." And my dad was like, "You're going to be a director, kid." I love it. And then, growing up, we would watch movies a lot together, and we would talk about, what was being done in the movies. He would ask me, we'd watch a scene. He'd ask me why it was, why it looked that way, why it was.
That's so cool, man. That's lovely to hear. My son, he's 5, and he's only just realizing what daddy does. In fact, like you, James, a bit like we all do, really. I kind of wear multiple hats. And yesterday I was on a TV series, like one of the kind of mainstream shows here, and my son stayed and watched it with me. And 5 minutes later he was bored out of his mind, but for those few minutes, he was like, "Wow, how did you do that?" or whatever. And that's such a nice experience, I think, to be able to share that. So that's amazing that your dad took the time out to kind of explain what he does and stuff. So it's a lovely story.
Yeah. So when you made My Pure Joy, then by then you were really experienced, I suppose. It wasn't like you were walking on set and hadn't, picked up a camera before, you hadn't edited before, you hadn't directed, I mean, it's a horror movie. We love these kind of movies. Obviously, I'm a big horror fan as well. Tell us about it. Tell us if you can remember the feeling of you going, right, I'm going to make a feature. How did you raise the money? How did you go about it? That'd be really interesting.
So, I mean, I was at 18 years old. I just finished high school. I had not tried in school that much, so I wasn't going to get into a good college. My 2 older sisters had already gone to college, my parents were saying, I need a scholarship to be able to afford going to college, or I was going to have to take out loans, and I didn't want to be in debt. And so I said, Robert Rodriguez only needed $7,000 to make his first movie. That's all I need. And so I wrote a script, which was My Pure Joy, and I just sent it to everybody I knew and was asking if they knew anybody I could get $7,000 from. And a friend of mine decided to put up the $7,000. And so I made the movie for $7,000. It was, I personally think it's terrible. Some people like it. There's people who have gotten tattoos of the main character. But I think it's awful. That was my film school. When you said that, I was experienced, I said I was experienced enough to have an experience, because, I learned so much on that movie, because I had to do every single job. I was operating the boom while directing, and mixing the sound and everything. So, I learned so much on that movie. And I think the biggest lesson I probably learned on that film above anything else was I really needed to not be so precious, because my biggest mistake on that film was, I wrote it, I directed it, I edited it. And so I wasn't going to cut it out of the movie. Mm-hmm. So, the movies, my first movie, which should have been a brisk 80 minutes, is 110 minutes.
Wow.
Yeah, okay. So you wallowing in those really nice shots and stuff like that. You were like, oh no, this looks ace. Yeah. Yeah. Did you think even at the time though, that it, and now looking back, you can, of course, we all look back at our projects and go, oh gosh, oh we're, at the time though,
I cringe. I can't watch it. No, I can't watch it.
But at the time, did you think you were making something really good, or did you know at the time?
Oh, at the time I thought I was making, Academy Award worthy stuff.
Yeah.
I remember my dad literally said to me, you're going to want to cut about 20 minutes out of this movie. And I was like, no, I'm not cutting anything. You're being ridiculous. And 4 movies later, and I look back, I'm like, oh, geez, and I realized it was so funny because I found myself telling people these scenes are just slow. Like when we watch it together when I was younger, these scenes are slow, but it picks up later. And I was like, I should just cut down the scenes that I'm saying these scenes are slow. Why am I you can get through the slow scenes. It's important for what happens later.
And what else did you learn? Because that's really fascinating that you learned that, or not quite quickly afterwards. But was there anything else you learned on that set? Was working with actors, going, I need a sound person, things like that?
Yeah. I mean, it was interesting because, every time I did a movie, I remember the first time I had an actual crew for one of my movies, which was a lesson I learned later. And I was just so grateful for them because I was like, wow, you mean there's a person who does the thing that I've been doing? All I have to do is talk to the actors and my DP and actually direct it and talk to my wardrobe and costume. I don't have to shop for all the clothes myself and all the stuff that goes on the walls myself. I don't have to dress the walls. I did everything myself. So it's I was like, wow, there's people that do these things. I can just focus on just directing. That's great. Which is why, now even to this day, if we're falling behind, I will help whatever department. I'll get my hands dirty because I did it coming up. So it's why wouldn't I? I'm not going to just sit down and just wait for it to get done. It's okay. If we got to hustle, I'll carry some sandbags.
I love that. And it's so true because you've learnt on the ground up, and I did, and Sharpie did. I've made sandwiches for people on set. I've made sure that, whatever props had to be there. So even now making movies with budgets, you still can't help but think about that. You can't, it's in the back of your mind. It's nice to go, someone else is doing it, but it's still there. And I think at any point you just pick up a tripod or pick up food or move something or move cars. It's part of it.
Yeah. And you have to dance that line of not being disrespectful because you don't want to insult somebody. And it's not that you think you're better at it than them, but sometimes me just doing it is easier and quicker than me explaining to them how to do it.
So true.
So, there's that constant dance because, there's egos involved. You don't want to hurt people's feelings, but, you also want to be able to jump in and do the thing that you need to do.
And how do you navigate that, James? When you are dealing with 60 potential egos, it's something that I'll be honest, I have struggled, particularly in the early stages of my career where I was coming across kind of different kind of personality types and egos were flaring up. I again, at my earlier stage of my career, I would really struggle to kind of contain myself. Whereas I work with my wife, and my wife is, a much, much better on-set producer because she really is measured, calm, and can really listen. And it's something I've had to kind of really improve on. But how do you cope with that, considering you've done so much?
It depends. James, the director, and James, the producer, cope with it very differently.
Right.
But I mean, I'm very good at reading people, and it just depends on, what response you feel is going to work best for somebody. Because there's some people that if you're too nice to them, they are literally just going to steamroll you because they're there to just do that. And one of those telltale signs is if the first thing somebody says on your set, if they're a crew or an actor or blah, 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 you're not paying me enough to do this, or normally I make this, or blah, blah, blah. If you've agreed to do the movie and that's what you start saying, that's the type of person that you need to get rid of. They can't be there anymore.
100%.
Because they will be a toxic sickness that spreads through the film. Like, that's not, I'm not trying to be ridiculous, but across so many movies that I've done, like, I've experienced it so many times that like, that will be a bad apple, because they, like, if they're saying stuff like that on like day one, they're just begrudgingly there. They think that this is beneath them. They're going to like undermine you and sabotage. And it's a weird thing that you have to think about, but it is true. Like, you really do have to look out for that behavior, because it's people who are there who just believe that, like, you know, they shouldn't really have to be there, but they took the job anyway. So they're upset about their own decision, and they're not going to leave, but they're just going to be negative the entire time.
Yeah, it's so true. It's absolutely vital. It's very hard though to remove them sometimes. You sort of go, look, you don't want to be here. You're making everyone, bringing people down, and they'll be the first ones who are bitching in the corner, and because they are experienced, the other people who aren't so experienced do listen to them, and they go, oh gosh, yeah, it must be like that. Oh, it is shitty, and you have that horrible feeling. You know, you're absolutely right. You do try and move them on. If you don't want to be here, go.
And that's one thing where, like, you know, I'm talking from experience. Like, many times I've tried to make that work, but it always ends up biting me in the ass. And like, you know, I'm not trying to be rude by saying it, because, like, you know, I believe it's a team environment, and I like to have a lot of fun on my movies, and I love the people I work with. A lot of the people I've worked with have done, you know, 10 movies with me, the same people over again. But, you know, if they're complaining to you, they've already spent a whole bunch of time complaining to the crew.
Yeah.
True.
Yeah.
Very true.
You've got to nip it in the bud straight away.
And are you still witnessing that, James? Now, obviously, the more work that you're doing, the more successful you've become. Are you still seeing that time and time again, or kind of a little less frequent?
You know, I dealt with it a lot more when I was younger. You know, the younger I was, the more like they're like, you know, this kid shouldn't be doing this. So, like, you know, there was that. But like, it's interesting, because every time you go up a budget level, you have those people. Does that make sense? Yeah. So it's like, you know, I was have the crew that works at that budget level. You go up a budget level, you bring that crew with you, and then you fill some of those holes with new people as well. And some of those new people are like people that were working on an even higher level, and they're taking this job because they're between jobs. Right. Mm-hmm. So like, you know, and half the time they're amazing, and you're like, oh, this guy's great. And then the other half of the time, you know, you end up with somebody who really just does not want to be there, but they're just working because they got to bring in money, and they're begrudgingly, you know, doing everything. Yeah. You know, it's one of those things that, like, I actually bring this up only because I've listened to a lot of filmmaker podcasts, and like, nobody's like actually candidly mentioned this.
Yeah, I mean, we all experience it. I mean, I think you raise a really good point there as well, James, where, you know, we're all trying to raise the bar. We're all trying to get to a certain point in our careers, and though, yeah, we might have started up on lower budgets and you know, and not had the luxuries that come with bigger budgets, but, you know, ultimately, you know, you want to work with people that are just, they're grateful to be there, and it's a team effort, and we're going to all dig in, and we're all going to chip in and whatnot, and eventually, you know, you reward that loyalty and that good behavior with those bigger budgets further down the line. So I think people, you know, I do think people should really sometimes think about that, you know, the bigger picture as well.
I mean, in indie film, we are asking our crew, because a lot of them are working for below what they would normally get elsewhere. And so, like, you know, we're asking our crew to bet on the idea that we are going to be successful in the future, and we'll get bigger budgets and more stuff, you know, and so what happens is, you know, you're going up, and your crew that is coming up with you is going up, and sometimes you pass people that are on their way down. Yeah. And they can either go back up with you, or they can, you know, stay where they are, or they can continue to go down. I mean, that's just how it is.
And what do you find is the best way to deal with a problem crew member or problem person on set? What do you find is the best way to approach it?
I mean, I honestly, now I interview people, and you can tell in the interview if they're going to be a problem. I mean, you know, before I would go off of credits and, you know, do a phone call and like do like a brief interview, but I do like a way more in-depth interview with people, because you can really tell now. I mean, like, you know, it's just signs, you can tell. And it's, you know, I've just decided to go with my instinct more often. Like, if there's a red flag, and you're not getting the warm, fuzzy feelings about it, like you're usually right. Yeah, it's from experience.
Do you have a bunch of kind of peers, James, producer friends or director friends that you get references from as well?
Yeah, I do. I do. But ultimately, what I have is I have the crew that I've worked with the most. Yeah. That I've used many times, and a lot of the times maybe they'll be on a commercial, so they can't do it, or like they're on a Netflix show or something bigger, right? But they will recommend somebody. Yeah. That would be, a good person for them. And a lot of the time, I go with their recommendation. Yeah. Cause it's somebody I've worked with before that did the job that I want them to do. And they're saying, well, this guy's good, and can handle that job.
Yeah, I think recommendations is really key as well here, because word gets around very quickly. As much as there's quite a lot of people making indie films, it is a small industry, as in the word does get, as much as directors might only make 1 movie, 2 movies a year, crew members working quite constantly, and word goes around. And it doesn't take much for someone to go, nah, you don't want to work with them. They were, honestly, they were just a bit moany and a bit, we all talk. Podcasts like this, we talk. It's easy. Me and Sharpie talk. Did you work with that person? Yeah, I'm not sure about them. Or I'll ring a mate who worked with them.
Yeah, I mean, I will rarely hire anybody that hasn't worked with somebody I know, so I can find out what they were like. And you'll notice, like, everybody's very diplomatic. So, like, I'll call a filmmaker and say, hey, how was this person to work with? And a lot of the time they'll say stuff like, oh yeah, I worked with them. Like, if you call me and somebody I enjoyed working with and you say, hey, how were they to work with? I'd be like, dude, they're fucking awesome. You should hire them. Like, if I'm not getting that response, a lot of the time I'm like, oh shit, well, that says enough.
Right. It does.
One of my friends, he's just got one of the leads in the second series of The Witcher, and I gave him his first kind of initial break in film. And at the time, he was not long graduated, and he was one of those guys that came in early, stayed later, chipped in, moved set, costumes, whatever. And I could see that he was so hungry, like I was a few years before. And I said, mate, just stay on set, watch, ask questions, do whatever you need to do to learn. And again, that attitude, there's a reason why he is, and there's countless examples of guys that have just got to that level, eventually, because they just put in the work and they're good people and they appreciate it's a privilege to do this for a living.
Yeah, no, it definitely is a privilege. And I mean, like, dude, we get to do the coolest thing in the world. We get to like play make believe on like a large scale. Yeah. Like, it's awesome.
Awesome. And then speaking of awesome, obviously your first film did really well, My Pure Joy, as much as you might not like it, or you might say, oh, I'm, they're tentative about watching it again, but it did really well. It went to the top of the charts. It did really well for your career, right? Because you then went on and made your second film not too long after, Hate Crime. Was it easier? I'm saying at the end of that, to get the second movie made. I mean, did you go for a bigger budget? Did you work with some of the same crew?
It was a slightly bigger budget, and no, it was just me as the crew and like 3 other people. But it was easier because the guy who invested in the first movie got his money back, so he just flipped it back in.
Wow.
So I just did that's how I got the second.
Which is great. Which is a really cool start for you, isn't it? How did you know how to distribute the film then? How did you know to get it out to the right places? How did you even get it to the top of the charts?
It's funny. I sent it to a distributor, and they picked it up, and it was the distributor I wanted to distribute the movie. So it was like the very first distributor I wanted to take the movie took it. For my first movie, and how I got in touch with them is, this was 10 years ago. So how I got in touch with them is I had all of their DVDs. I collected all their DVDs, and like would buy them. And on the back of the DVDs, it had like a mailing address. So I just literally took a copy of the movie, put it in an envelope with like a letter and mailed it to them. And I got a phone call saying they wanted to pick it up.
I love that story. That's so great.
thinking outside the box of how you could do it and finding a distributor who you've liked and said, well, if they distribute my movie, I'll be over the moon?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing is like, a lot of people, when it comes to distribution, people are like, oh, I want this movie to be with this person, or I want this movie to be with this person. But like, look at what they actually put out. One of the things that has really helped me with like, getting my movies distributed is I go like, okay, well, are they putting out similar movies to the kind of movie that I'm going to make? And like similar in the sense of like, yeah, the story might be different, but like to a consumer, is it a similar movie? Because if to a consumer, the box is going to make it look like this type of movie, then yeah, they're going to end up being interested.
Like say you carried on working on a very small team on your second feature. Is that because you didn't know, or is that just because you thought, well, it worked the first time, I'll carry on?
Oh yeah, for sure. It was because it worked the first time and I was like, oh, I'll carry on.
Well, it worked. I mean, did it work? I mean, I had that attitude on my second one and it didn't work.
I mean, so my second movie, it was a found footage movie. Okay. It was made all to look like one continuous shot. And so I like DP'd it and directed and it definitely worked. I graduated to larger budgets and, the golden rule, right? He who has the gold makes the rules. So like eventually I started working with producers that had done movies and they, they demanded I had a crew.
Yeah, you're like, I can do all this myself. But they're like, no.
Yeah. But all of it was ass backwards on my first three movies too, because like I didn't get paid at all on my first three movies, and that's fine. Like they were lower budgets, but I didn't even know that I could get paid to like do the job of directing. I thought my job was to like I would get a percentage of what the movie made if it did well, and like every time it would be like a gamble roll of the dice. And then like I remember the first time I got hired to direct a movie and I got paid, and I was paid literally I was paid $1,000 for my first directing gig, and that I was paid to do, and I was like, holy shit, you can get paid to do this?
I know, that's a really weird feeling, isn't it? It's almost like you feel like you're some sort of charlatan.
Of course I love working with a crew, and my earlier comments aren't to knock on crew. I've had a lot of crew that I love and respect and I've worked with many times. It's more just, obviously this is a filmmaker podcast for tips and tricks and I just want to know that like, it's not all sunshine and rainbows. Like going out there, it is a battlefield and you have to strategically, move your chess pieces in the right way to have the most people surrounding you that are moving towards the same goal and are on your team. So when it seems like people aren't on your team, nip that in the bud quickly.
We learn as filmmakers, producers, directors, when we're the head of the ship, to talk to the crew better. We understand that they can't get inside our heads, and we have to open up and say, here's what I'm aiming for this, because they don't know. And especially if you're sat there with an actor doing a scene for ages and they're cold in the back room going, well, I can't do anything right now. They don't know what's going on. And I think it's really important that you tell your crew, you speak to them. And I've learned that. I've learned that from making films and making mistakes and going, shit, I can be better. I think we always think that, right? And
what you said, James, at the beginning was, preparation is everything. In that interviewing process, you just be honest. And just be upfront with them and say, look, this isn't a job that we're necessarily going to earn a fortune on, but we're going to have some fun. We're going to make the best movie possible. And, let's bring that attitude from the very beginning.
Yeah, definitely.
You'd made 3 movies by the time you were 21, right? I'd say you'd made, by that point, it looks like, 30 or 40 you've been involved in, but you directed 3 movies by the time you were 21. Is that right?
More.
I love it. This is incredible. I mean, was it just a case of you were just going, right, I'm just going to do another one, right? I'm just doing another one. Was it almost every other month?
At 18, I made My Pure Joy. At 19, I made Hate Crime. Do a movie, and that movie fell through.
You were about to do a movie and it fell through?
Yeah, it fell through, and I was completely broke and didn't know what to do and how to, do stuff. And people had asked me, how did I get out there and make movies? And I had always say, well, I just picked up a camera and did it. And so, get out there and do stuff. And so I was like, I got to practice what I preach. So I reached in my pocket, took out my cell phone, pointed it at my friend, told him to say something. And, he did. And then I was like, oh my God, this is going to work. I went and wrote the script, and that became To Jennifer. and I made that on a $500 budget.
Wow. This is one of the first films shot on the iPhone 5 as well, right?
Yeah, correct. And I made that on a $500 budget. And that film, because for some reason everybody was impressed on the iPhone stuff, that film is the film that got me hired to do a movie. So after that, I was hired to do White Crack Bastard, which I was, that's the $1,000. I was paid $1,000. And then after that, I was hired to do 13, 13, 13 and Pernicious. Yeah. And so those were all the movies I made by 21.
Right.
And then after that, based on Pernicious, which went on, Netflix and all that stuff, and played film festivals around the world, I just got consistently hired to do movies from there. And so at 22 years old, I believe it was either 21 or 22, I directed Blood Lake for Animal Planet. So I did the first a feature film for Animal Planet that was like a live action feature film, scripted, and was like the youngest filmmaker to have done a movie for network television.
Incredible. Huge congrats on that, man.
And
well done.
Thank you. And then from there, I just kept consistently getting hired to do stuff. And some of the people that I had worked with had moved up to do, different things at different companies. So they would bring me in as well.
Amazing. Were you looking for certain projects? Because obviously it's quite horror based. Were you like, I'm going to stick with this genre? Did you have an agent? Did you have anyone guiding you once you started to do well and you were breaking out and people were paying you?
I mean, the only person guiding I would get guidance from my dad, and my dad's point of view on everything was do as much as you can, because at some point, these are all just going to be thought of as your early films.
That's really interesting. That is true, because we do get locked into this. No, my next movie has to be amazing. I have to break out. I have to make loads of money so I can make more and bigger. Mm-hmm. But I think you're right. I think the more we do, the more we learn. So it's just a conveyor belt of let's keep making movies as best as we can, and we grow.
Yeah. I mean, I believe, filmmaking is a muscle. And so you need to exercise that muscle and build it up. And, I think I've really honestly found my voice as a filmmaker in the past 2 years, my voice and style, 2 or 3 years, and you can see sprinkles of it throughout all of my movies, but I think I've really honed it when I did Bethany. And from there, I've had this, voice and style, I feel, that I've built up on. And, it's interesting because I think that comes from the experience of, I was able to trial and error. I was able to try things out on each movie and go, it worked in this movie, but I don't actually want to do that thing ever again. So I was able to try things out, and a lot of my earlier films were like experiments. It was like my film school almost. And then, of course, I don't think anybody watching it would think that they play as regular movies, but I tried things differently to try and feel out what my filmmaking style and voice would be. And so I do agree with my dad's statement that everything would be my early films. Even now, these might be considered my early films that I'm still making. Because I'm 28 years old. A lot of these are still going to, if I continue at this rate, are still going to be the stuff from the early part of my career.
So fascinating to hear, isn't it? When you look back and you just go, yeah, well, of course they were my early films. It's all right, because I'm still making movies, and that's what we want to do and aim to do. So if you get a chance, I'd say as a director, you get a chance to make a movie, go make a movie, because they don't come up that often. And the more you're making movies, the more chance you are someone's going to go, oh, well, come and do this movie then,
I agree. And, now I've gotten more selective, and I pull back, and I do about, one a year as a director, and then I fill the rest of the time producing. Yes. So I'm less selective producing than I am directing. Now directing, I pull back and do one a year.
Yeah, that makes a big difference. Let's talk about some of your later films, the films that are sort of around now, and the films that we're sort of talking about today. Obviously, For Jennifer is sequels of your found footage movie to Jennifer.
Yeah, it's the fourth one in that franchise.
And the fact that you're producing this rather than directing, and you haven't directed one since the first one, right? Is that correct?
Yeah, correct. And what I've done is I've been giving a voice to first-time filmmakers.
Which is really cool.
So, you know, a lot of them are, you know, the first one, I mean, the second one was made by Hunter Johnson, who's a first-time filmmaker. And I've actually produced a couple of his movies since then. He's gone on and since that, he's made I think, like 6 or 7 feature films. Jody Barton, who directed For Jennifer. It was his first feature film as a director and writer. And Frank Merle, who did the third one, he actually had directed a movie before. But you know, it's early in his feature film career. I think it was his second or third feature.
That's great. And what was the reason for doing sequels then? Was it a case of, well, that did well and we can get the same amount of money or a bit more to make another one?
A little bit of that, and a little bit of like Hunter Johnson pushed me to do a sequel for the second one. And from there, I just kept going, well, if it's open, the floodgates are open then.
And what do you bring to the table then as a producer now? Is it...
I resources, you know, my advice, you know, I don't get in the way of creativity ever as a producer. You know, if my director asks me, I give my opinion, but I won't offer my opinion without being asked, especially creatively. You know, so I just handle what's behind them so they could worry about what's in front of them.
Right. That's really cool.
You know, I would never, as I have too much respect for the position of the director, that I never do anything that I would not want a producer to do when I'm directing. And so, you know, that's how I handle stuff as a producer. And, you know, one of the other, so I stay out of creativity a lot of the time unless they ask me to get involved.
That's really great. Yeah. And I think it's good advice for producers out there, young producers. Is there anything else you would like to add to that to help young producers out there, or producers? What advice would you give them, you know, about finding projects or working on projects?
A lot of producing is being good at negotiating, managing personalities, and knowing that, and creating connections, having access to talent, and also knowing that, you know, knowing how to handle situations, and, you know, staying cool under pressure, but also knowing when to allow yourself to be angry and upset, because, you know, that's one thing that I think you have. If you're cool under pressure, but you lose your cool maybe 1 or 2 times, maybe 3 times a movie, if you reserve those times that you lose your cool, the people know that it's super important and they'll like leave it alone. You know what I mean? Like, and you have to utilize those in the right moments.
Yeah.
I don't know if that sounds ridiculous.
No, that's some good advice. The times where there's only maybe 1 or 2 times I've somewhat lost it, and that's just slightly raising my voice, but then instantly I regret it, and it's never a good thing unless, like you say, it's, you know, there's no getting away from it, and sometimes you do need to kind of be a little bit more loud. But you're right, that's some good advice.
Yeah, it's very good. And let's talk about directing then, in terms of your latest movie. As far as I can tell, there's probably 7 others, Beyond the Law, because this isn't a horror. I know you haven't just made horrors, but I think this is interesting because this is, you know, it's more of an action thriller, crime action thriller, you know, and it's starring Steven Segal and DMX and Johnny Messner. I mean, talk us through how this came about for you, how different it was to create something like this, and how great it was to work with someone like Steven Segal.
It was an interesting experience. You know, I made, you know, I think like a very moody thriller with action elements, you know, and I think it's a fun, interesting movie. And I had a lot of fun with the colors and style to it. And a lot of the violence is pretty great. So I had fun. Ultimately, like, you know, I took a break from horror for a few years and started doing other genres because, you know, I hit like a wall in horror, which I don't know if other people have experienced, but like, you know, at a certain budget level, it just capped out. Like there was no, like, that's the one thing a lot of people don't talk about is like, you know, in horror, like, I'm just being like very frank, between 500,000, there's like, it's up to $500,000 budget. And then anything above that is like studio. It's like Blumhouse or these other places. There's nothing in between. You know, there is, people aren't making the $1.5 million horror movie on an indie scale, you know? So like I wanted to have budgets.
Yeah, totally understand that.
So like, I mean, that's the truth. Like, you know, $500,000 is like the cap out on a lot of these movies.
It is. It seems to be the norm. So you wanted to move away and sort of go, well, I want to make, you know, I want to live for a bit and get paid, but also make movies that have a bit more budget so you can create more, you know, more vision, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately my goal was to, you know, work on a higher level. I mean, I want every movie I direct to feel like a step up. And, you know, I felt like at horror, my next option would have been a lateral move.
Yeah.
So I wanted to, and I didn't want to be one of those people that gets caught doing the same thing over and over again. Because the problem is like, you know, I spent and I found a way to get out of it, but I spent a good amount of my career. I was doing these lower budget movies, and, you know, I would let producers know, hey, I made this movie for X amount of dollars, because I thought like they'd be impressed and they'd go, oh my God, you know, if he can do that with this kind of money, imagine what he could do with this kind of money. But I'm going to tell you right now, that's not how people think. If people watch your movie and they think it's a good movie and you've done a good job, and you tell them, hey, you made it for, you know, $250,000, once is going to be like, oh, great, this guy's good at making movies for $250,000.
Yeah, true.
Let's give him another $250,000 movie.
Yeah, it's true.
Because he did a good job, or she did a good job.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
It's like, well,
they didn't need anything more than what they had.
Yes.
Give them that.
Yeah. So what's the way out of that? Like you say, you move genres, but also do you tell them it was a bigger budget?
Genres.
But you just move genres.
I mean, I stopped talking about budgets, and then I moved genres. And that's the thing, is like, you know, I'm giving away little secrets of things that I've learned. So hopefully I don't have people that are hiring me listening to this.
I understand what you're saying. What did you learn from Beyond the Law then? Like you say, doing something slightly different, slightly out of your wheelhouse, even though it's not, because we're making a film is making a film, and that you now can't wait to take to your next one.
You know, I think I learned how to deal with, you know, every time I learned how to deal with personalities, you know, on a different scale, and I think, you know, Beyond the Law was the most difficult shoot of my entire life.
Was it difficult? What, in terms of, because was it weather bad? Was it just, was a lot of stuff to get done in a short space of time?
There was a lot of stuff to get done in a short space of time, and my dad went to the hospital on day one of filming. And he ultimately, you know, after we finished filming, you know, and I was with him a lot of time, but he ultimately passed away from that hospital stay. You know, he never left the hospital from that point. And so, you know, I went, you know, so I would film and then go visit him in the hospital. So it was, you know, I was not sleeping. It was not an easy, experience at all. But I think I learned what strength I have in me to get through difficult situations. Because if I could get through that, I could get through anything. And, you know, I wanted to quit and not do it anymore. But every time I would talk to my dad, he was super against it. And I think it was because he knew if I quit, then if I really did quit, I think either A, I believe he, you know, I think it's a multitude of things. I think B, you know, A, he believed that, you know, he would have wanted me to finish the movie because that's how he is. He would have wanted me to do that. He wouldn't have wanted to get in the way of it. That's just how he was, you know, that it made him happy knowing I was doing stuff. But B, I think he knew if I quit and stopped doing the movie, then his situation was worse than he wanted to believe it was.
Right.
Yeah.
So I didn't quit because I knew he wouldn't have wanted me to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so you managed to get through that, because that must have been a really horrific time, and carry on into the edit and just get the film delivered. I imagine that was just, heartbreaking, but
it was, yeah. And I will say that movie, and then the movie I did after he passed away, you know, so I did 2 movies in that span because I had already been contracted to do them. Right. But, you know, those movies were super difficult. And I would also say, you know, I probably had if I did, I apologize to anybody involved, but I probably had a shorter fuse in those time periods.
Wow, your career is incredible. It's going from strength to strength. It's going to keep going. It's super exciting. Thank you so much for the advice you've given. If you can give one final bit of advice to a filmmaker coming up now, what would you give?
I would say, look, if you're listening to this right now and you're at home, now is the perfect time to write your script. Now is the perfect time to pick up the phone and film something, do something, because you're at home looking for something to do, create. I read somewhere that Edgar Allan Poe was writing during this. I read that, during the plague, that's when Shakespeare was writing. It's definitely do something, right? Shoot something. If you want to make something, make it. And I think that's the most important advice I can give, because ultimately there's really no excuse now. And it would be acceptable to have something with limited resources now. So just make it.
Very good advice.
So true. Where can people follow you on the socials then? Obviously, you've got your 70,000 followers, so maybe they'll get a follow back. But whereabouts can people find you?
I'm on Twitter at James Cullen B, and then I'm on Instagram at James Cullen B.
Perfect. It's amazing. Great. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much for having me. Hopefully I didn't ramble too much.
Oh man.
No, it was brilliant. And good luck with the releases of everything and with your next stages. And I'll see you next time I'm in LA for sure. For sure.
Yeah, definitely. Let's link up, please. We would have if there wasn't the whole coronavirus situation. We were on the cusp of it, but
Yeah, I know. So close. Ian, where can people follow you?
Same. I'm on Twitter, Ian Sharp, and Instagram. I think I'm Ian Sharp 1. So that's me.
Perfect.
Is that Sharp with a P-E or just
a P?
Yeah, and you can follow me at Giles Alderson or the Filmmakers Podcast at Filmmakers Pod. And if you do like this, do tell your friends, get the word out there, because that's what's so important and how we grow and we keep doing this. And remember, you can go make your indie film, though. Even right now, even if you are stuck in your homes, you can go make your indie film, but know who your audience is and get out there and do it. And if you're lucky enough to rise up and do well, it is your duty to send the elevator back down. James, thank you again.
Thank you so much. Thank you for taking the time.
My pleasure. And we will see you all, thank you for listening, next Tuesday. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.